Hi, and welcome to Understanding Merkaba and Vortex Mechanics. This is part 4, and we will be discussing the principles of natural energy generation. You may be wondering why I included the video about how weather systems work in the last lesson. Well, the purpose thereof will be revealed by this lesson. The way climate works is very similar to how Merkaba and Vortex mechanic work, and now I will explain it. Everything in the universe is a fractal of the universe design template, so it's a replication system. The climate system doesn't work as well as it used to before the Earth's axis was tilted. Our Mother Earth is a sentient soul being that has a Merkaba field. Everything that produces or can hold energy has a Merkaba field. A Merkaba field is an etheric structure of electromagnetism that is based on a universal design template, and its geometry is natural and organic, with occurring differentials, and the structure of the Merkaba field holds and produces energy for the survival of all sentient beings. I know that sounds like a minefield of information, but we'll unpack that as we go along. What follows in this lesson may, at first, seem irrelevant, but they are principles we find all over the universe. So one doesn't have to fully understand what is being taught here as long as one has some grasp of the principles involved. A Merkaba field is the energy producer of all sentient life, and is the theatre of reality in which we experience our lives and reality in the hologram. Everything that has energy and produces energy has a Merkaba field. It's called life force, or prana or chi. Mother Earth has a Merkaba field, and so does our Sun and our solar system, as does our galaxy, as does our universe. We may call it different names here, but no one is telling us exactly how and why it works the same everywhere in the universe. When the Earth's axis was tilted 23.4 degrees off its central vertical magnetic alignment, it distorted our Merkaba energy fields that created an energy wobble that will be explained further as we go deep into this. More importantly, it changed the angle of rotation of particle spin of all atoms, molecules and cells, so that all particles that are aligned with the magnetic field no longer hold their full energy holding and production capacity. This will become clearer later in this lesson. In other words, all the atoms in our bodies have a distorted angle of rotation of particle spin compared to the upright alignment of the physical body. This misalignment causes health issues, a rapid deterioration of the cellular structure of the physical body, and eventually contributes to premature death of the physical body. Eternal soul beings are not meant to have this rapid deterioration of the physical bodies. It only occurs because of the misalignment of the particles or atoms in the body compared to our upright alignment of our physical bodies. It's an energy wobble. In the final part of this course, we will learn how we can correct this imbalance over time. In our final lesson, we will devote time to learning how we can, over time, realign the angle of particle spin back to our upright physical body. Though our physical bodies have this distortion, our soul bodies still hold the divine blueprint for correcting this misalignment. In the universe, everything is in constant motion. Even when we are asleep in our beds, we are in fact moving, sometimes at great speed through the universe. The Earth is rotating and spiraling around the Sun, and the Sun is rotating and spiraling around the galaxy. This video illustrates it.
Hey, Vsauce! Michael here. Do you have a best friend who is there for you 24/7, 365? Sorry, that's not really good enough. If your friend truly had your back, they would be there for you 24/000067365.2421891. Also, George Washington was born on February 22nd, 1732. At least, that's what we're told. However, his family Bible says he was born on February 11th, 1731/2. So, which is it, Mr. I cannot tell a lie? Oh, and don't even ask about 1752. In Russia, 1752 looked pretty normal, but check out what the British Empire was up to that year. Nothing really out of the ordinary, except Ember. The second was followed by the 14th. Were 11 days just deleted? Where'd they go? What happened then? It is time to question time and how the Earth moves. Reconciling both of these things has led to some pretty strange things. We all love time-lapse videos of the stars moving across the sky. But really, we are the ones who are moving, tumbling through the universe on a giant, wet rock vehicle called Earth with a windshield called the sky. As viewed from above the North Pole, we spin counterclockwise. West chases east. I always remember this by thinking of the US as a weird, mane-headed animal with Texas and Florida legs running forward. But we don't just spin. We also revolve around the sun on a plane tilted 23.4 degrees relative to our spin. It's kind of nauseating at this scale. But from this perspective, you can see that the sun rising and setting is just the Earth pointing you towards and then away from the sun. This motion causes your sunrise, your noon, the moment when the sun is highest in your sky, before your sunset. To more closely investigate this movement, let's talk about meridians. You are on one at this very moment. Your meridian is just a line from where you are right now, straight towards the north and south poles. It's a line of longitude, as opposed to the horizontal lines that lay flat when north or south is up that we call flatitude, or actually latitude. The sun is highest in the sky to you, your noon, when your meridian is pointed right at the sun. A cool thing happens at this moment. All shadows around you point directly towards one of Earth's poles, unless you're on the subsolar point. The subsolar point is the point on Earth's surface directly below the sun. It's always somewhere. You can check its current location online, links as always in the description. On the subsolar point, shadows fall straight down so they can easily disappear. Twice a year, the subsolar point crosses over Hawaii, the only place in the US where it hits land. And when it does, it is called Lahaina Noon, meaning cruel sun. Straight vertical objects look unnatural during this brief time, like they don't belong, as if they were photoshopped in without regard for reality. In Honolulu, a sculpture by Isamu Noguchi called Skygate casts a twisted shadow all day, every day, except during Lahaina Noon, when its shadow is a perfect circle. You may not live in a place where the sun ever appears directly overhead, but once every Earth rotation, the subsolar point falls somewhere on your meridian, making it noon for you. The technical name for this noon for you is local apparent solar noon. The clock on your wrist and the clock on your phone don't tell you your local apparent solar time, because long ago we realized that if every meridian had its own time, a person just a few kilometers away, seeing different shadows than you did, would disagree with you on what time it was. So towns adopted their own time. Now later on, this trick was standardized and time zones as we know them today came about. But that's not all we didn't like about shadow-based sundial time. To explore deeper, we have to begin by asking, what's a day? I mean, obviously it's just the time it takes the Earth to turn around once, right? But according to what? Everything else in space is moving in some way too. The universe doesn't include a convenient sheet of graph paper at absolute rest we can trace paths on. The best we can do on that front is to look at very, very far, far, far away stars. So far away, like distant features of the landscape out the window of a moving car, they barely move as Earth does. Now, to them, a meridian on Earth completes a trip around about once every 23.9 hours. This is called a sidereal day. Sidereal means pertaining to the stars. Even though the sidereal day seems pretty clear, it's not what our calendars and clocks are based on, because there's a nearer star whose position relative to us has a bigger effect on our lives: the sun. Looking down on the North Pole at Earth's counterclockwise spin, the Earth also moves counterclockwise around the sun. After a sidereal day, the Earth has moved a bit along its orbit, so some more rotation is required for the same meridian to point back towards the sun again. This longer definition of one rotation is what the modern calendar and clock is based on. It is called the solar day. But here's the thing. Exactly how long the Earth has to rotate to complete a solar day changes day to day. Our clocks are just based on the average amount of time this takes, so throughout the year, they fall ahead and behind the sun. This is a solograph, a picture of the sun's path across the sky every single day. If our clocks actually told us local apparent solar time, if you took a picture of the sky every day at noon, you should get a line of suns. But this is what really happens. Over the course of a year, it will appear as though your clock is running slow, and then fast, and then slow again, and then fast again. This problem was known since at least ancient times, even if its cause wasn't. In order to reconcile the two, the equation of time was constructed. In this sense, equation means to reconcile. The equation of time was applied to what a clock said in order to compute the real time, the solar time a sundial would show. Now, some fancy clocks, called equation clocks, were made that would do this for you, but eventually, we gave up. We gave up and just said, no, the real time isn't what the sun says, it's what our inventions say. Now, this transition was a big one. It was humanity growing up. It was like the first time you realize you're stronger than your parents. We realized our timepieces were more regular and turned our backs on the timepieces nature had. But what causes this disagreement in the first place? As it turns out, the answer revolves around revolving, the way the Earth revolves around the sun. If the equator faced the sun all the time and the Earth always orbited at the same speed, the subsolar point would just stay right there on the equator throughout the year, and the amount of extra time spent rotating the Earth needed to do to finish a solar day would always be the same. But those two things aren't the case. First of all, the Earth's orbit is slightly elliptical, so its speed varies throughout the year. When it's moving around the sun faster around the beginning of January, the amount of extra turning time needed to complete the solar day is longer than when it's further away from the sun and moving more slowly. There's more. Because the Earth is tilted, the subsolar point is dragged throughout the year in a circle around Earth that's not the equator, so it changes direction, moving northeast then leveling out and going southeast, before leveling out and going northeast again. During times of the year when the subsolar point is being dragged by Earth's orbit mostly east, it gains against Earth's spin faster. More time is required for the day to finish. Now, by coincidence, we are alive at a time when both of these phenomena lengthen and shorten days at roughly the same time. So they add up, making September 18th almost a minute shorter than the longest day of the year, December 22nd. For northern hemispherians, December has the shortest periods of daylight, but the whole solar day, from sunrise to sunrise, is for everyone on Earth the longest of the year on December 22nd. People in the north just spend most of it in darkness. Earth's tilt doesn't just affect how long a day is, it also affects how long a year is. This is because the Earth's tilt is what causes the seasons. For the half of the Earth tilted towards the sun, the same amount of solar radiation is spread across less space than it is on the other half, so there's more heat energy laid down per area. This causes what we call summer and winter for the other half. The amount of time from one of these seasonal orientations of the Earth to its occurrence again is called a solar year, or a tropical year. It's a very useful way to define a year because it contains every single season exactly, since it's based on the very orientations that cause them. But the problem is this: the number of solar days that occur in a solar year is not a whole number. It's almost 365. But after that many solar days, about a quarter of a day more happens before the solar year starts again. This makes designing a calendar more like designing a calendar. If your calendar only ever has 365 days in a year, over time, those dates will drift from the seasonal positions they used to occur during. Unless, this extra quarter of a turn adds up to a full day after 4 years. See, March 1st is coming a day too soon now, so if we just delay March by adding an extra day at the end of February every 4 years, a leap day, we're back on track. Leap days do not add days to your life. You're still going to live the same number of them. They just change what we call them. But really, who cares about being 1 day earlier every 4 years? I mean, 1 day isn't much, you'd hardly notice it. But over time, well, if America's founders had declared not only independence from Britain, but also from leap days, and abolished them from happening, today, 240 years later, their calendar would be a full 2 months ahead of Earth's position, putting America's coldest winter days in April and its hottest summer days in October. Adding a day every 4 years is what the famous Julian calendar does. Introduced in 46 BC by Julius Caesar, it was the de facto standardized Western calendar for a very long time, more than a millennium. But it's not perfect. Look closely. Leap days actually move the calendar just slightly too far each time, because I lied. 365 1/4 solar days don't occur within one solar year. The real number is slightly less and fluctuates year to year based on long-term changes to Earth and the Sun's movements, which means adding 1 day every 4 years is just a teensy-weensy too many. By 1582, Julian calendar dates were 10 days behind the seasons compared to where they used to be. Now, that's not bad, 10 days in more than a millennium and a half. But the Catholic Church cared, because they wanted Easter to occur exactly when it used to centuries ago. Astronomers at the time realized that if leap days pushed the calendar too far behind the seasons, we would just need to celebrate fewer of them to fix the problem. Specifically, we would need 3 fewer leap days every 4 centuries. The rule they wrote to achieve this stated that every 4 years would continue to be a leap year, except if it was divisible by 100 unless it was also evenly divisible by 400. This removes 3 every 400 years. On October 4th, Pope Gregory XIII introduced this new calendar. It took his name, the Gregorian calendar. He also undid the drift that had occurred since the early days of the Julian and declared on October 4th that tomorrow would be October 15th. October 5th to the 14th never happened in 1582 in countries that listened to the Pope. It took the rest of the world centuries to hop on board. England and its colonies, like the soon-to-be United States of America, adopted the Gregorian in September of 1752, by which point their Julian dates were off from the seasons by 11 days, hence the disappearing of the 3rd through 13th. When adopted, the first of the year was also moved from March to January 1st. This explains why George Washington's birthday has 2 answers. Although more closely hitched to the seasons than the Julian, the Gregorian calendar still isn't perfect. Its difference causes dates to become 1 day off from the seasons every 3,216 years. Other calendars have been proposed, like the one Stand Up Maths calculated that drifts off even more slowly. His video is a great watch, by the way. But enough of all of this. Let's sit back and enjoy Earth's movement without trying to divide it up and name it. As a caveat, keep in mind that Earth's oceans and liquid insides and other celestial bodies are always pulling and tugging and sloshing around, minutely changing Earth's movements. Their effect is measurable, but difficult to notice at big scales and also don't look like much in the short term, short like the length of a human life. Looking from above the North Pole, the equator spins counterclockwise at about 1670 kilometers per hour. Relative to the sun, Earth orbits counterclockwise at 108,000 kilometers per hour, along a path tilted 23.4 degrees to its spin. Within our local neighborhood of stars, our entire solar system is drifting 70,000 kilometers per hour, roughly in the direction of the bright star Vega in the constellation of Lyra. And our solar system is part of a giant galaxy called the Milky Way, on a plane tilted about 60 degrees, approximately like the windshield of a car. Looking from above Earth's North Pole, our entire solar system races clockwise around the galactic center at about 792,000 kilometers per hour. Our whole galaxy is also moving through the universe. We know this because when the universe was very young, it was so hot, electrons and protons jumped around, and photons of light scattered constantly. They couldn't travel very far before scattering again, so the universe was opaque. But then, around 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe cooled just enough for electrons and protons to form hydrogen. Suddenly, abruptly, photons decoupled from this obstacle course and could travel relatively unencumbered. The universe became transparent to light. And since that moment, those early photons have been propagating through space. Every day, ancient photons that last scattered off this opaque fog at the moment of decoupling, a light day further from where Earth currently is, reach us. They are part of the cosmic microwave background radiation. It is visible in every direction. Microwave because although they used to be more energetic, the universe's expansion has redshifted them. Now, some parts of this radiation are more redshifted than others because of our own movement through the universe. Controlling for the movements we've already talked about, relative to this infinite, cooling baby picture of the universe, the first and oldest detectable light, we are headed, riding along in the Milky Way, in the direction that the constellations of Leo and Virgo are to us, at a speed of 2.1 million kilometers per hour, towards a thing we don't fully understand yet, simply called the Great Attractor. This is how you on Earth's surface are moving through the universe aboard spaceship Earth. Okay, now stop. This is roughly 100 years of Earth's movement through space. This path we've traced, from where we began here, is the path you will take through the universe in your lifetime. You didn't buy a ticket for this ride. Your parents signed you up without asking. But nonetheless, it is quite literally the ride of your life. And as always, thanks for watching. It is now time for a major Vsauce announcement. You know how for the last couple of years we've released a holiday box? Well, introducing the Curiosity Box by Vsauce. We created this thing as a quarterly box. This comes to you 4 times a year, and it comes packed with amazing, exclusive Vsauce merchandise and incredible geeky toys picked by myself, Kevin, and Jake. Plus, as always, a portion of the proceeds from this box goes to funding Alzheimer's research. You can get your own by subscribing at thecuriositybox.com. I'm incredibly proud of this. Go check it out. And as always, thanks for watching.
Let's look now at the mechanics at work in storms, hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes. All of these phenomena require movement, that is motion, geometry, that is shape, differentials, is differences in temperature and air pressure, etc., and are transported through a medium, which is air, to produce a natural organic energy during a storm. These elements are also present in the Merkaba, that is the energy generation system of the physical body, and gives and maintains life force energy, prana or chi. So let's look at them one by one. Movement. As stated earlier, everything in the universe is in constant movement and motion, relative to everything else in the universe. So movement is the changing perspectives that a point in time and space provides to the time and space experience. In our physical world, this movement is given by the rotation of the Earth on its axis. But where does this movement come from? It is a reflection of what we said earlier. In the universe, everything is in a constant state of motion. It is the movement and rotation of the Earth that gives us day and night, morning and evening, dusk and dawn, the wind, the seasons, the climate, the storms, hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes. Movement causes friction between differentials, like matter and air, water and land, and is the fundamental cause of all adaptability. In the universe, everything is in constant motion. Even when we are asleep in our beds, we are in fact moving, sometimes at great speed, through the universe. The Earth is rotating and spiraling around the Sun, and the Sun is rotating and spiraling around the galaxy. It is the fundamental movement and rotation of the Earth that provides for us life force and balance. Geometry and shape. How does the geometry of the Earth affect the weather and climate? Besides that it is spinning, it spins at different speeds depending on where you are relative to the equator. The Earth rotates once every 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4.09053 seconds, and it's called the sidereal period, and its circumference is roughly 40,075 kilometers. Thus the surface of the Earth at the equator moves at a speed of 460 meters per second, or roughly 1,000 miles per hour, and becomes progressively less the further one moves vertically from the equator. So the geometry of the Earth causes differentials of the ground spin speed relative to where one is in relationship to the equator. At the north and south poles, the spin speed is zero. But where does the geometry and shape of the Earth come from? It comes from something called cymatics. Cymatics is the study of visible sound and vibration. Is geometry a product of the underlying wave motion of magnetic sounds? How can sound be visible? Let's have a look at how cymatics work. The world of cymatics gives us a different view and provides a major evolution in our understanding of how sound affects all of us. Cymatics gives validity to the fact that everything that we perceive as hard objects, including our bodies, are actually continuously vibrating at their own rates. This principle of cymatics leads to a fundamental principle about geometry, sacred geometry, and symbols. Inasmuch as sound produces shapes in the hologram, so do shapes and symbols carry the information from the sound fields. As waves of sound create geometry, so does the geometry carry the information conveyed by the sound waves. This is relevant to the importance of geometry, sacred geometry, and symbols that we will deal with in future courses. So it is our observation of it that makes it so, combined with the universal principles of holographic creation, that causes the earth to be flat or round. In fact, from an energetic standpoint, it is both. It is our observation of it from our own perspective that creates the illusion of flat and round, whereas, as we shall see, it is both flat and round like a toroid. As you can see in this illustration of a toroid, it is round at the edges, flat on top and the bottom, and it has a central hole, if you can call it that, or a central vortex in the center, the still point, as it is sometimes called, that gives it its unique shape, like a donut. Geometry, when combined with movement and mass, creates leverage, momentum, torque, and amplified energy. So let's go explore what leverage, torque, and amplified energy are. What is leverage? Leverage is when a lever amplifies an input force to provide a greater output force, which is said to provide leverage. This is a simple illustration of this principle, where the force applied is equal to the force provided when they are in balance. So like a normal fulcrum with a lever applying force, and force is applied downward, it produces an upward force. That's how a seesaw works. That's a common principle that children use. In the illustration below, we see how the small force creates the same energy as a large force, mass and gravitation, when a lever or leverage is applied at an increased distance. So you have the small force, which produces a large force because of the distance between where this force is applied and where this force or mass exists. Now, when these principles are applied to our Earth's geometry, we can see how the force at the equator is greater than the force at the poles. The Earth is spinning around its center that creates more leverage. The further the distance is away from its center, so at the equator, the Earth has more force or more momentum than at the poles. And this momentum creates a differential that causes the Earth to spin counterclockwise, just as in the Borealis effect in the weather systems. Leverage can also be considered to be borrowed energy, like when you buy a house and use a mortgage loan to borrow enough money to buy a home. That is leveraging the value of your home in order to buy the house and borrow money. This borrowed money is an exchange energy exchange, provides the momentum or motivation to buy the leverage. This principle is used in many different ways. For instance, in heavy lifting machinery, in its early use it was first used as a single gear and was popular on farms. Later on it was discovered that the efficiency of lifting objects was enhanced by adding further gears. You may be wondering what this has to do with Merkaba fields. Let me explain it this way. Everything in the universe is codependent and borrows energy from a stronger force by leveraging that borrowed energy to sustain its momentum and create a greater force than its original form. The Earth borrows the gravitational force of the Sun through distance to gain and sustain its own evolutionary and rotational momentum, and we borrow the Earth's energy in our soul fields in order to gain and sustain our own energy. So everything's leveraging off each other. These principles of leverage and momentum are fundamental to understanding the law of one and codependence. If we observe nature in an intelligent way, we will see this principle in action. Everything borrows or feeds off the energy of others. Seeds borrow the energy in the soil, the light from the sun, the water in the ground, and the air around it in order to grow. Our bodies borrow and feed off the energy of minerals, plants, birds, fish, animals, air, water, and the sun in order to grow. Just as when we borrow money, we are required to pay it back. So too does leverage require not just a borrowing system, but a payback system as well. This exists in our Merkaba fields. It borrows energy and pays back the energy. But sadly, humans have largely failed in their energy payback by borrowing energy, holding on to it, and not paying it back. Paying it back to those who they have borrowed from. The minerals, plants, birds, animals, air, water, and the sun, and each other. This is a dereliction of our duties as guardians of Mother Earth. In the universe, payback is like a circle, the circle of life. We pay back when we pay back to others as well. It is not just a direct payment, but an indirect payment as well. So when we give to others, we are paying back what we receive from the circle of life, and we increase our leverage when we give more than we receive, in order to increase the gearing, leverage, and momentum for not only ourselves but others also. This is how the universe works. A discussion about leverage would be incomplete without an understanding of torque. What is torque? Torque is a twisting or turning force that tends to cause rotation around an axis, which might be a center of mass or a fixed point. Torque is often used to describe the optimum force that can be obtained through leverage, such that the outgoing input is greater than the initial force. The outgoing output is greater than the initial force. For instance, in a motor engine in motor vehicles, leverage has restraints. One cannot borrow energy that one will not be able to pay back. This is also called the gearing or leverage ratio. One can increase or decrease torque by increase or decreasing the circumference of the axle. Optimum torque creates a force greater than the original force, such that the outgoing force is optimally greater than the original force. One cannot borrow energy that is beyond one's ability to pay back. So the optimal torque is the extent that one can borrow energy and pay it back comfortably. This ratio between what the input and the output energy is called the gearing or leverage ratio. One can increase or decrease torque by increasing or decreasing the circumference of the axle, the point at which the energy is moving around. Optimum torque creates a force greater than the original force, such that the outgoing force is optimally greater than the original force. In the next part of this course, we will discuss and reveal the optimum gearing ratio of the Merkaba field. All of the principles discussed in this lesson are relevant to how natural organic energy is created in nature in storms, hurricanes, typhoons, and tornadoes. Movement, geometry, differentials, momentum, leverage, torque, and the medium that carries them are all relevant to how storms and weather systems are created. And these principles also apply to how natural energy, organic energy, is produced by the Merkaba fields. Well, I hope you have found this interesting. You may find the following video of interest in understanding the purpose of pyramids if you view it through the lens of the principles you have just learned.
Mainstream historians will tell you that the Great Pyramid of Giza was a glorified tomb for the Egyptian pharaohs. The only monument left of the original seven wonders of the world, this structure was created with impeccable mathematical precision and is a unique, mysterious feat of construction and of engineering. There's only one problem. The Great Pyramid has none of the characteristics of tombs, including extravagant artifacts, ornate wall art, sealed entrances, elaborate coffins, or even mummies themselves. It was, however, built with unique materials, the same materials that are used today for electrical conductivity. These facts are leading more and more historians to believe the pyramids may have had a far more useful purpose. The Pyramid of Giza was not at all a tomb, but a power plant, generating and transmitting electricity to the civilization surrounding it. Impossible? Join the universe inside you for a closer look. To start, it's important to comprehend the tremendous effort that went into creating these monuments. The pyramids of Giza are among no less than 118 of these structures in Egypt alone, and that doesn't even include those pyramids in other parts of the world. Given our current understanding of how early civilizations built their monuments, it would have taken no less than 20 years to build these so-called tombs, and that's if no less than 20,000 workers worked daily. To this day, historians still can't prove exactly how or when they were built. This leads us to ask, what resting place for the dead could possibly be so important that it would warrant such phenomenal effort, time, and precise engineering? Even without knowing that they have nothing in common with regular tombs, you only need to stand before them to realize that's a lot of work for a cadaver. Naturally, we make conclusions based on the assumption that ancient civilizations were more primitive than us. But what if intellectual evolution isn't always linear? Can advanced technology be lost and rediscovered centuries later? Is it possible that an ancient culture had knowledge of and used electrical power? To know for sure, let's look at another case where technology of power generation appears to have been used and then forgotten. We know Edison and Tesla brought electricity into common use moving into the 20th century. Yet, in Iraq in 1934, 3 artifacts were found together, a ceramic pot, a tube of copper, and a rod of iron which, when combined with a liquid acid, can be used to create chemical reactions that produce an electrical charge. Known as the Baghdad or Parthian battery, these materials date back 2,000 years. 10 years after their discovery, someone using grape juice with similar materials successfully generated a few volts of electricity. This process has since been demonstrated on the Discovery Channel's program Mythbusters, where lemon juice activated the electrochemical reaction between the copper and the iron, producing 4 volts of electricity. Nowadays, you can simply search online to find instructions on how to create your own battery using these chemical principles. But historians have long assumed that thousands of years ago there was no knowledge of this technology, that this archaeological find is mere coincidence, even though we've long marveled over artifacts with intricate gold plating, which requires electricity to be created. Quite simply, energy generation happens as a result of simple chemical properties and can be done by anyone with 4 basic materials. So, here are some important facts about the structure and the materials of the pyramid. For starters, it contains angled tunnels which lead not only into the pyramid but deep underground, to areas claimed still to be unexplored. What tomb needs a shaft directed into the earth? We also know that centuries ago there were enormous swivel doors that weighed no less than 20 tons, but miraculously it was so well engineered it could be moved to enter with a push of a hand. Since no Egyptian tomb has ever been found to be deliberately accessible, what was their interest in continuing to visit the mummies, or could such a door have served the purpose of perhaps containing and insulating the space inside? Though you'd almost never know it, the Great Pyramids of Giza were once covered in white polished limestone, referred to as casing stones. The cuts made in this reflective stone were angled perfectly, so it would have a smooth, flat appearance. This would have made the giant structures brightly reflect the light of the sun like a mirror. It also would have made perfect insulation inside the structure. A large earthquake in 1303 disrupted the casing stones, and they were removed to use on other structures. Today, all that remains is the inner core of the pyramid. The image of the incredible amount of light that would have reflected from the monument raises curiosity, as does the reason for the insulation. Was there a desire to draw attention to their dead? To keep mummies warm or cool, or perhaps something else? Next, the material, dolomite, was used on the inner surfaces. Dolomite is known to increase electrical conductivity directly relative to the amount of pressure on it. High pressure creates more electrical current. Next, lining the passageways and underground tunnels of the pyramids is granite, which is slightly radioactive. Granite contains high amounts of quartz crystal with metal, and it's a well-known conductor of piezoelectricity. Piezoelectricity occurs as a result of stress or pressure on the quartz, as demonstrated by the wristwatches, which can be charged simply by rapidly shaking them. This granite actually ionizes the air inside the pyramid, creating a chemical reaction which, again, increases the conductivity of electricity. When such electrons are given the chance to bypass sections of rock via metal wire, quite large currents can flow. Another important material used to construct them is the mysterious mortar, 500,000 tons of it, which holds the giant stones in place. Though it's been analyzed many times, modern technology has yet to exactly recreate this gypsum, which comes from sediment. This gypsum can withstand tremendous pressure and astoundingly is even stronger than the stones themselves. Clearly, it's contributed to keeping the monument intact for thousands of years. But could there be another reason why they used a material which could withstand such high pressure? So, limestone, dolomite, granite. Supposedly constructed for a tomb are, in fact, analogous to the exact materials we use to make electrical wires. They also share a relationship with pressure, which increases their electroconductivity. Just northwest of the Great Pyramid is the Serapeum. Here there are 20 huge granite boxes, each weighing 100 tons. Classic Egyptologists say these are coffins. Yet, the granite here came from 500 miles away, and each box is so large and so heavy that there's no possible way it could fit through the existing tunnels and entrances. These supposed sarcophagi were therefore somehow built into the structure with such precision they are within a 10,000th of an inch of being perfectly flat. In the meantime, any electrical engineer will explain that a container serving as an energy capacitor, or battery, must be made entirely of the same substance, so there's no interruption in the magnetic field. Could these boxes be just that? If so, there's a centuries-old granite sarcophagus on display in an Egyptian museum that's thought to be unfinished. Unlike those in the pyramids, this one's cracked, suggesting that perhaps it wasn't unfinished, but simply abandoned, because the crack which occurred would have interrupted the magnetic field, permitting it from successfully serving its purpose. So there is clear evidence to support the possibility of an electrical use. Since these supposed sarcophagi are clearly way too large for a human being, the accepted theory is that they were, yes, believe this, bull coffins for the pharaoh's prized bulls. Makes you wonder who came up with the bull coffin theory. To add to the mystery, in 1993, a mysterious and inaccessible room was discovered after remaining hidden for thousands of years. Appearing to have deliberately been concealed by the structure's engineers, the room came to be called the Queen's Chamber and was finally explored in 2011 with a small remote camera to reveal a long-lost mummy? Hardly. It contained carefully crafted copper wire, and more importantly, there were instructions painted as symbols onto the floor, which appeared to show a clear wiring diagram. Look at any battery, from those used in large power plants to the smallest pellet batteries in wristwatches, and you'll see that they require a metal, such as copper, to create the chemical reaction known as potential difference. You can run an electric current through copper wire, and the coil will produce a short-range magnetic field. Add a second coil, and the power is transferred from one coil to the other. A windowless room with copper wirings could create a higher potential on one wall, which transfers energy to the lower potential on the other wall, consequentially releasing electromagnetic energy into the confined space of the so-called Queen's Chamber. Sadly, these wires have since disappeared entirely, and mainstream Egyptologists claim there's no functionality whatsoever to this room, as they also claim there's no functionality of anything in this structure beyond the ways it serves as a tomb. Good place to note, however, that the foremost Egyptologist, Zahi Hawass, was indicted for theft of Egyptian antiquities. It could still be argued that the electrical materials used to construct the Great Pyramid are simply coincidental, because an energy generator still requires a catalyst from another source. Perhaps then this explains why the pyramids are geographically located over a powerful natural generator, underground rivers and aquifers. Physioelectricity could be harnessed from the power of the current as the water flows, and it has been proven that thousands of years ago the Nile River passed directly by where the structures now stand. Of course, this brings in a debate about the age of the pyramids themselves, along with the weathering on the nearby Sphinx, indicating that the monuments are actually double the age they're currently assumed to be. Perhaps that would explain why there's no mention of the pyramids or their creation in any of the Egyptian writings. So if water was a source of power, it would have traveled up the limestone based on the principle of capillary action, which happens when a small area of a substance that gets wet absorbs into the entire area of that substance. So water flowing near or underneath the pyramid could have been absorbed as it passed over the limestone, even traveling upward to the top of the structure. The quartz in the tunnels of the pyramids would subject to the stress or vibration, creating piezoelectricity. The high force, speed of the rising water, and the pressure would be analogous to filling a syringe, generating electromagnetic energy within the structure by the materials within it, and conducting it upwards to the now missing capstone. But why? The geographical location of the pyramid may give us some clues. It is located exactly at a point which magnifies the electromagnetic forces on the planet, where telluric currents are at their strongest. There's an electromagnetic field at the bottom of the pyramid, which would rise to the upper layers with these chemical reactions. We don't know for sure what capped the pyramid, but there is speculation that it may have been gold, explaining, of course, why it's long since been missing. If it were gold, this could have created a conductive path for energy to be directed upwards, high into the ionosphere. If superconductive materials were used to create this monument for energy, then the potential for something even more amazing might have been possible. Wireless electricity. Sound far-fetched? One bold and extraordinary man swore this was possible, and he may have showed us how. We know of Nikola Tesla as the solitary genius responsible for the electric engine, radio, laser, radar, and for creating a tremendous competitive spirit in Thomas Edison. We know Tesla sought above all to serve mankind. In fact, despite his extraordinary contributions, he's scarcely known or credited for his genius. At the 1893 World's Fair, Tesla transmitted electricity naturally to a light bulb he held in his hands, and he created the Tesla coil, which is used more today for show than for the function it was intended to serve. Most importantly, we know that Tesla claimed adamantly that he had perfected the method of harnessing and transmitting free wireless energy using the electromagnetic nature of the planet. In a patent Tesla filed in September of 1897, he claimed that at 30,000 feet altitude, there's a stratum of rarefied air that would conduct electric currents at high voltages. In this proposed system was a transmitter which would transmit millions of volts into the atmosphere. Then he had something receive the electricity and reduce the voltage to a convenient potential to be used by consumers. In an experiment the last week of July in 1903, nearby residents claimed to have witnessed Tesla successfully conduct his experiment at the Wardensife Tower, while Tesla himself, sharing his new method of conductivity, said that it lit up the night sky as if it were a giant fluorescent tube. It's even been said that he successfully wirelessly transmitted pictures and sounds. Though all of his work has been mercilessly destroyed, this cannot be proven. Sadly, Tesla's technology was confiscated shortly after his death. He died in poverty, and the U.S. government destroyed his tower, claiming it was being used by German spies. Had Tesla succeeded in his mission, the distribution of power on this planet would have been very different today. Compare Tesla's technology to the pyramids, the location, height, and electromagnetic materials. We've seen induction between copper wires work for short distances. For a long-distance transfer, the same principle can be applied when acoustic energy is converted to kinetic energy, and the frequencies match. The way an opera singer can shatter a glass when the sound wave he is singing matches the resonant frequency of the glass. So if there's a magnetically oscillating current and you create a second possessing the same frequency, the wireless transmission can pass through solid materials and through long distances. The frequency which would have been released from the pyramid would have to have been matched in the surrounding area. Perhaps this would explain the obelisks, the tall monuments which could be acting as receivers, particularly if there's a quartz stone at the top of them. This would also explain the ancient carvings in Egypt, which so clearly indicate light sources it's boggling to think anyone would even argue it. In the Hathor Temple, the Dendera light is one such image. It perfectly resembles modern electrical technology, showing a wire inside of a bulb-like area and a box which appears to be a receiver. Across from this carving is a similar image, but the system appears to be falling into the hands of a reptilian-looking being, as though it's a warning of the potential to abuse this technology. Mainstream historians scoff and make more primitive conclusions, but still, the pyramids show no sign of soot from flame torches. Instead, there are multiple carvings which show these antenna-like objects that appear to be a transmitter, near another object shaped like the famous symbol, the Ankh, which appears to be the receiver. Given all this, it seems so much more believable that the Great Pyramid functioned using the same principles and conditions as Tesla sought to demonstrate, that they conducted and directed electromagnetic energy into the ionosphere, where it generated and transmitted electricity wirelessly to receivers within the civilization. We've long believed that the pyramids were just tombs, but this theory raises more questions than it answers. Why do they have nothing in common with other tombs? Why the unique construction materials made to build it, including the very materials required for conducting power? Why the oversized granite boxes proven to have never contained any mummies, or the ones that are clearly too large for humans? Why the alignment with the North Pole, the 20-ton swivel doors, intricate tunnels and chambers, shafts, and areas still yet to be discovered? Why is there no soot from fire torches anywhere inside the structure? And why do the tunnels protrude deep into the earth? These mysteries still elude our understanding, but more and more people are accepting the possibility that the Great Pyramid of Giza had a more important function than we understand. We know there is a heightened electromagnetic measurement around the pyramid that's equivalent to that made in an electrical storm. We also know that if you look at them from space, you can see that they're actually 8-sided, not 4-sided, and that there are strange heat spots observable only with special equipment. They have unique electric materials, including copper, and a design that suggests high pressure and water power. They have a powerful magnetic structure and placement over the telluric currents. They're aligned with the stars, and the unique art of the area shows clear depictions of wired light sources. All these things suggest there's a lot more to this story than we've been told. All these circumstances make the likelihood high that the pyramid was created to be a compact energy generator and a broadcasting system that transmitted electricity wirelessly. The implications for this understanding of electrical power by an ancient culture is huge. It would rewrite history as we know it. Do you think that free energy could be transmitted wirelessly around the world? And whether or not you do believe that, do you think that if it really could do that, we would actually know about it? Thank you for watching, and hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. If you're new, please hit subscribe and the bell next to it to be notified of future releases.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to watch part 5.